Tôi sẽ luyện ngày 1:40. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Recently, I've been feeling unmotivated and tired all the time. It reached the point that we're doing anything besides the bare minimum. Even the activities, one that I enjoy a lot, that is the hobby, stop it feeling good. So I started stressed from anxious, so I found an interesting podcast that helped me understand why I had so low levels of motivation and drive. I learned a lot from podcasts and briefed my situation and decided to share my takeaways with you. So let's get started. All your motivations, right, come from a neurotransmitter in your brain called dopamine. It drives you to go after a thing you need or want. You want to be able to muscle and it's the dopamine. Basically, you need to function and survive. Just like carburetors and batteries, in a similar way, you need dopamine to function. So to simplify, dopamine is your battery. Now, dopamine has quite interesting ways of functioning. It has a baseline and a peak. To simplify, just say your baseline in two is your peak, your four. Let's say that chocolates or smoked cigarettes and dopamine suddenly spikes to the peak, to 4. After some time, dopamine levels need to come down, and here's the most interesting part. After the peak, your dopamine level doesn't return to its previous lowest level, which is 2. It drops below level of 2. The higher dopamine spike, the bigger crash comes afterward. In other words, the higher spike, the lower your dopamine level gets afterward. You have probably experienced this yourself. For example, after reaching the big goals and graduating and getting the dream job, you feel amazing for a while. But after some time, you start to feel empty, sad, and depressed. This is a simple example of dopamine dropping below its baseline after a big spike. Understanding the relationship between baseline and the peak is super important. That's why I gave you one more example, so please stay with me. Let's say you discover a video game for the first time and you get a huge dopamine spike from playing. And we said earlier, it's higher spike, the bigger crash. The lower the new baseline. After the dopamine crash, you feel sad, so to reach same level of excitement, you go back and play again. You get a dopamine spike again, but not higher before. If you keep playing repeatedly, you will lower and lower dopamine spike. And at the same time, your baseline drop lower and lower. This is the reason sometimes you see the people who play video game or any other activity reach a point, no energy, motivations to anything. Every often become depressed, anxious. Again, the explanation is simple. By spiking the dopamine level very often, they reduce the baseline so low that now they don't have enough dopamine reserve left for anything. As I explained at the beginning, dopamine is like a battery. It gets depleted. The more often you spike it, the sooner you deplete. Isn't just video game. A lot of things you enjoy doing spike dopamine, whether it's food, social media, cigarettes, chocolates, exercise, etc. It doesn't matter activity or things if you keep doing it very often, you eventually reduce your baseline, which leads to a low level of motivation and drive for other things. You don't have to different dopamine batteries for different activities. You only have one universal batteries. So if you want to have a healthy mass dopamine reserve, you purposefully reduce the number of things up by your dopamine. In just a minute to give you a tip to do that, but first let me explain why dopamine functions the way. There's an evolutionary relation behind it, and understand is important. Imagine you are alive 10,000 years ago. You woke up and no food or water, so you need to go find it. But there are dangers out there, predators, poison animals, cold, storm. Still, you need the motivation to do that because your family is hungry. Dopamine is how your brain motivates you to go to face those challenges. So you go to find the fruits and berries and collect them. Now you food for your family, you found the reward. You experience a dopamine release, and that makes you feel excited and happy. Then after big release, dopamine is returned to some lower level. Why? Because if you just staying up there in the high level, you will never feel motivated to go out and find more food. For those it goes back down, and it actually goes down to a level below what it was before. because after a big rush of dopamine, not much is left. Okay, that's a full understand how dopamine functions. Let's talk about solutions and think we can do replenishes. You get more motivation and drive. To explain how to do this, I use the example of exercising. Exercising always wake up some level of dopamine release. Of course, it varies from person to that's person. You don't hate exercising, but you don't have either. You hate feeling as sweaty, but you want to do this. You want to improve your health. I believe you need to lose weight. You try it several times before, but always you lose interest in giving up. Now you are just enrolled in the gym. You start a new exercise routine to make your experience more pleasurable. You take your cell phone with you and listen to music while you exercise. You also convince your friends and say you drink some energies before this. You still feel lazy. Also, you have to remain focused on rewards. You look awesome and feel some awesome. You stick to. You try to motivate yourself so you think it. It's such to be here right now, but I love it. I done. If I exercise every day with myself, a huge milkshake is on Saturday. Okay, so here's the scenario. They're doing something particular like you doing every day to make it bearable. You added more layers of pleasures of things, energy, drinks, music, and friends. You also have your mind focused on the end goals and then empty and motivated yourself. If this sounds like a good plan, but there are many problems with this way of doing this. First of all, you usually motivate layers or motivators to make exercising more pleasurable. But doing that, you conditioning your dopamine level to be higher only when you have all these layers in place. That means exercising will only pleasurable if you have energy, drink, music, and friends. Remove one and you feel like giving up. So if your friends make a workout, you feel much less excited about exercising. And this will be an obstacle between and your goals. To fix that, avoid the attention to always make things as pleasurable as possible. What you should be searching for is intermittent release of dopamine. Some days you get it, some days you don't. You can still exercise every day, you no problem, as long as you make sure you are getting super higher levels of dopamine from every day. So what you should be never in varieties. Sometimes you listen to music while you exercise, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you go exercising in morning, but with your favorite type of day, but sometimes you go afternoon, but you hate. Sometimes you consume your energy drinks, others come you don't. It sounds contradictory. But the truth is, you want to maintain motivation for school, exercise, work, relationships. The key is to make sure your dopamine doesn't spike too often. Now, going back a little, there's another big problem there to add. You have to focus on rewards, that is losing weight and being healthy, and having a huge meal stack on weekend. Let me explain why this is a problem. There's an experiment done in Stanford many years ago with the calories the children draw. The richest and started giving them a little tray rewards and drawing. A gold star is something your young child finds rewarding. Then researchers stopped giving the children this goal. And what they found is that the children had a much lower tendency to own because there was no reward. You see, before receiving rewards, the children enjoy drawing. You have some intrinsic desire to do it, but after rewarded, it's become all about reward. If you give yourself rewards for something, you tend to associate less pleasure with the activity itself. If that's a reward, your brain understands that you didn't do activity because you enjoy activity, you didn't for a reward. So you dissociate and nervous dopamine that would have normally an active during activity. And they happen only with the rewards now. So how can you fix that? You have to stop telling yourself that doing at first is great. You tell yourself, and the effort part is the good part. I know it's painful, I know this doesn't feel good, it's my choice and my focus on this. If you repeat this over and over again, you will start associating dopamine release with the effort. Personally, dopamine is easily influenced by your thoughts. So the sum of don't spike dopamine before engaging in effort, and don't spike dopamine after engaging with effort. You want to learn spiking your dopamine from the effort itself. So if your effort is exercising, forget losing weight, being healthy. Also, forget about later or motivators before exercise, making the efforts pleasurable. And next example of this intermittent fasting. Some people have a 2 hours feeding. Some people don't fast, then 2 days even. This is how worse is fasting. If you're very hungry and dopamine is highest, and what's why food tastes even better. So this is the big reward that comes at the end. And what happens to be you get used to intermittent fasting is that they start taking a liking to fasting itself, not to the big release dopamine from eating after the fast period. Their states are mind clear, they like feeling, that feeling lighter, and they think about all the good things that are happening in their bodies. They look at the clock and think, wow, I've been fasting 60 hours, and they enjoy the fasting period. So it's not about rewards that's come fasting ends. Fasting itself is the effort we become pleasurable. Dopamine relate attacks to the effort. What happened is that effort become the reward. It's become easier or more gratifying with time. So it sum up everything covered in video. Number one, dopamine is like batteries and every pleasure activity depleted. Unfortunately, you have on battery, you so need to use wisely and purposely starts removing dopamine spiking activities from your life. So that dopamine is reversed. This need to happen is your life a whole. If you can do it with your dieting exercise but continue including in Netflix, or if you slowly workaholic. Number two, dopamine has a baseline and a peak. Bigger spike and the bigger crash happens afterward. If you keep spiking every often video games, social media, anything you active, your baseline get lower and lower, and you will reach a point getting out of bed. Number three, focus on the effort itself. Don't spike dopamine before engaging with efforts. Don't spike dopamine after engaging with efforts. You want to learn to spike your dopamine from the effort itself. Woo! Ghê chưa? Quá hay, quá cố gắng.